Over the course of many months of these videos, the Whig-Tory fights are brought to light. It was not as if it was like a marriage where at times tempers frayed and words were said. No, the underlying differences between the two parties were always there. Hi, Michael Beashall, Australian historical fiction writer, here with you once more. And we're talking once again about the MacArthur-Wentworth's fights and the struggle to get the right form of government for particularly New South Wales, but also for the future of Australia through Victoria, Queensland and so forth. By the winter of 1853, however, Wentworth's age and body-punishing lifestyle were catching up to him, or at least at that state which slowed his powerhouse attempts to keep fighting for his views. He was 63 that year. He was starting to become disillusioned as to whether or not a Whig form of government should be established in New South Wales and where the protection of the pastoralist and his propensity for private ownership of land could be maintained. Now, Wentworth had read all the famous authors at the time who put pen to paper, and he'd studied Edmund Burke. He'd looked at John Calhoun from America and Alexander Hamilton as authored torchbearers and their views on plantation and aristocracy. But Wentworth was very sensitive to the fact that if he championed the protection of the country gentry, he would be accused, he'd be open of being a sellout of his convict past. We have to remember where he came from. He even started to think about his will and the devolution of his property, sort of thoughts of a man recognising his own demise. James MacArthur, on the other hand, he was different to his father, John, the famous merino sheep baron, as we know. James fiddled and he had a short-term vision. He was mainly concerned about what was around him at the time and in what undertakings he was doing at the time. That's all his vision really extended to, unlike Wentworth's. MacArthur's view had always been and would always be that democracy was anathema in the future of New South Wales and Victoria. He wanted a transplanted aristocracy from England. But notwithstanding all this, in July 1853, Wentworth presented a constitution to the New South Wales Legislative Council. He was fearful of the effects of the 1848 revolutions in Europe and to what effect those revolutions would have on the infant colonies, especially New South Wales and Victoria. For a Whig supporter, he introduced hereditary titles mirroring the English system. Very unusual move for him and quite unexpected, and this would come back to bite him. He also introduced a universal franchise for those earning £100 a year, not for everybody, but fairly wealthy people and over. And finally he recommended a General Assembly of Colonies of the Australian Group, a bit like our future Constitution of the Commonwealth, to make laws in relation to tariffs, to railways, to roads and canals and postage. Wentworth's proposed constitution, it wasn't accepted by the mob. They didn't want a bar of it. Henry Parkes, with his Empire newspaper, railed against it so much that in the Victoria Theatre, of which we have spoken about before, on the 15th of August 1853, 2,500 people shouted their opposition to it, and I quote, "This flagrant attack upon the public liberty." Henry Parkes, of course, was the proprietor of the Empire newspaper, as we just noted. Wentworth fought against this mob and still believed that the future of New South Wales could not be decided by every Tom, Dick or Harry. He also pushed for a conservative body to be a bulwark against the increasing democratic movement that was occurring. The best way to have that, Wentworth thought, was to have a second House of Parliament as a form of review. That's our Legislative Council in New South Wales today. Wentworth wanted an English form of constitution, not that Yankee one, which he said, and I quote, was tainted with democracy. There you go. But by December of 1853, everyone agreed that there should be two houses of Parliament, and the lower house should be wholly elected, which is what we have today. Wentworth was proposed to drop his idea of a hereditary titles legislation, and good on him for that. So we can now see the development of what we see today as the current arrangement of the New South Wales Parliament starting to take form. It was starting to come about, and we can see how the genius of that happened in 1850s. We're having a House of Assembly and the Legislative Council. In 1853 again, this was the start of this process. Wentworth in his later years was starting to question some of his ideas. I guess in being near his old age, he was doing that. So that's all from me, Michael Beashel. I'll see you in future videos, not far from now. Thank you and goodbye.